Press event today. I'm very pleased to be joined by the leaders of the legislature. Appreciate Senator Richardville, Senator Grammel, or Representative Grammel, Senator Whitmer, and the Speaker joining me today. We've been working for a number of days on trying to get a solution for transportation funding in our state. And the way I would describe it is I think we've made tremendous progress in terms of the leadership group. Discussions have begun with legislative members, and I appreciate the hard work each one of these leaders have done in that process. And I thought it was appropriate that we all get together and talk about how we support the proposal we put together in terms of the leadership team and walk you through it in terms of the details of that. To really start that process, a couple comments I'd make. Nobody likes our roads. Haven't found anybody. And we're seeing significant damage now to people's vehicles. People are spending lots of money on bent rims, blown tires and such, and we needed to come up with a solution, and I appreciate this. In the interest of doing this, where people all had a way to contribute to this process, I want to thank all the leaders for your great cooperation that we did this based on principle, and a series of principles that we all thought were important in terms of coming up with a solution. So what we've done is, actually on the board to your right is a series of 5 principles. So there are 5 principles that we said the solution needs to check the boxes to make sure we're taking care of these issues. The first one being needed funding for roads and bridges. The second one, protecting schools, communities, public transit, and rail. The third one is a principle that transportation taxes should go to transportation. The fourth one being competitive prices at the pump. And then the last one being tax relief for lower income Michiganders, and how to take all those principles and apply all those things. So what I'd like to do now is actually walk you through the proposal itself and then come show you how this proposal will actually walk us through these principles in terms of reconciling that. And then I'm going to ask each of the leaders to share their thoughts on specific portions of that. So with that, you'll forgive me, I'm going to take the show on the road to the other side of the room for a moment and walk you through the proposal, and we'll be doing handouts, so you'll be able to take something with you. So if we could hand out the documents at this time.
I'll just move over here. How about that?
I'll wait a moment to get the documents out, and hopefully for the media people you can pick me up okay. I have a mic on because I am out in the field, so to speak. In terms of the proposal itself, here are the principles again, and again, we wanted to give you the principles so you can take those with you to see that we have checked the boxes, but there's a couple steps that take place to make this happen. First of all, it does involve a ballot proposal. So we'll be talking about making a constitutional change with the retail sales tax in the state of Michigan. The ballot proposal would have 4 key elements. It would raise the sales tax, retail sales tax, and use tax to 7% from 6%. It would eliminate the sales tax on motor fuels. So with respect to the current 6% you see on motor fuels, that would disappear. The third one is there's actually some modifications, a narrowing of the constitutional provisions for the school aid fund to essentially take out universities. It would continue to cover public community colleges, career and tech ed, and scholarships related to those areas. And finally, to make the equation work appropriately, there's an amendment to the use tax where it moves some general fund dollars to the school aid fund. So this would be the ballot proposal in front of our citizens. This would be on the May ballot of this next year. So the time frame is soon because we have to do something about our roads. And pothole season will be upon us, and it will really reinforce the point action is required. In terms of the legislative process, a number of statutory things will be passed, we would hope, today, that will essentially be tie-barred to the ballot proposal moving forward. So these would only get implemented if the ballot proposal gets approved, much like we did on personal property tax. These items are a wholesale tax on motor fuels that would raise $1.2 billion on an annual basis. Certain changes to registration fees in terms of, for future vehicles, taking out a phase down of those costs of $45 million, and then making some changes on fees for heavy trucks of $50 million. A third one is, and you should be familiar with these, those that have been tracking this, There's improvements to warranties and competitive bidding as part of the transportation package that had been previously discussed. Given we're talking about an increase on the retail sales tax, there's a need for addressing that fifth principle for the income tax for lower income people, and that's restoring the earned income tax credit. These are, again, as I said, all contingent on this. When you look at it, this is the amount of revenue raised by the change in the sales tax would be $1.3 billion. The elimination of the sales tax on motor fuels would eliminate essentially $750 million. And these are the net numbers that would result if all is approved. We would end up with transportation funding of $1.3 billion. Of that, $1.2 billion goes to roads. In terms of public transit and rail, other comprehensive transportation fund needs, there would be a $100 million increase. Our schools come out ahead by $300 million. Locals come out ahead by $100 million. And then total tax relief. In terms of, I'm going to move to the other side, not to surprise you, but to show you that this is the proposal. How did we do on the principles? Needed funding for roads and bridges. We have the $1.3 billion, so we can check that box. Protecting schools, communities, public transit, and rail. As again, schools, they essentially get $300 million, which roughly would equate to $200 per pupil. Communities have $100 million. And then public transit and rail, $112 million. So we can check that box. Transportation taxes going to transportation. Again, we're eliminating the retail sales tax from fuels. And if you look at the other provisions, they're all dedicated to transportation. We can check that box. Competitive prices at the pump. If you look at what happens and you implement this, the taxes on gasoline from state taxes would go to about 42 cents a gallon, slightly less than that. If you look at the average price of gas over the last year and take that into account for sales taxes, it was about 20 cents or so. So this would be about, compared to last year's average, it would be about a 3-cent increase, less than a nickel. So we believe we can check that box. The other thing I would mention, if you look at surrounding states, Illinois and Indiana in particular are between 38 and 40 cents. They also have toll roads, so it would be plus tolls. Ohio is the only lower state at 28, but they have tolls, and they're looking to increase theirs. So in relationship to other states. The other thing is tax relief for lower income Michiganders. That's where the earned income tax credit becomes applicable in terms of restoring that to the 20% number. So we have $260 million in relief there. We can check that box. The other thing I would mention that I could have put in any place when you talk about the sales tax going to 7%, if you look at surrounding states, we would remain competitive in terms of our sales tax. Compared to Illinois, which is higher, Ohio and Indiana, we're all in the ballpark. 7% is not something that takes us out of the normal area for the Midwest in terms of that. So if you look at it, this is something. We started with principles, and I appreciate the leaders. Each one had a different emphasis on what principle meant the most to them. We found a solution that did this. The challenging part is it requires a ballot proposal, which is more work, but isn't it good that we ask our citizens to participate in this process in a constructive way? So with that, I'd like to come back up and start the more traditional process. I appreciate your putting up with me as I sort of go on a field trip to walk you through the details, but this is a significant proposal that I'm very excited to be supportive of. It's not done yet. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of getting 2/3 support, which we need in both houses, both chambers. But again, that's why I'm excited to be here with the leaders who are very supportive of this proposal, but I'm going to let them speak for themselves. And I do, again, want to reiterate, thank you for your partnership in this good, hard work.